There's something seriously wrong with the farms in Ireland. Every summer when I was a child, my family would visit our relatives in the northwest of Ireland, in a rural, low-populated region called Donegal. Leaving our home in England, we would road trip through Scotland before taking a ferry across the Irish Sea. Driving a further 3 hours through the last frontier of the United Kingdom, my 2 older brothers and I would know when we were close to our relative's farm, because the country roads would suddenly turn bumpy as hell. Donegal is a breathtaking part of the country. Its Atlantic Coast Way is wild and rugged, with pastoral green hills and misty mountains. The villages are very traditional, surrounded by numerous farms, cow and sheep fields. My family and I would always stay at my grandmother's farmhouse, which stands out a mile away due to its bright, red-painted coating. These relatives are from my mother's side, and although Donegal, and even Ireland for that matter, is very sparsely populated, my mother's family is extremely large. She has a dozen siblings, which was always mind-blowing to me, and what's more, I have so many cousins I've yet to meet them all. I always enjoyed these summer holidays on the farm, where I would spend every day playing around the grounds and feeding the different farm animals. Although I usually played with my 2 older brothers on the farm, by the time I was 12, they were too old to play with me and would rather go round to one of our cousins' houses nearby to either ride dirt bikes or play video games. So, I was mostly stuck on the farm by myself. Luckily, I had one cousin, Grain, who lived close by and was around my age. Grain was a tomboy, and so we more or less liked the same activities. I absolutely loved it here, and so did my brothers and my dad. In fact, we loved Donegal so much, we even talked about moving here. But for some strange reason, although my mom was always missing her family, she was dead against any ideas of relocating. Whenever we asked her why, she would always have a different answer. There weren't enough jobs, it's too remote, and so on. But unfortunately for my mom, we always left the family decisions to a majority vote, and so, if the 4 out of 5 of us wanted to relocate to Donegal, we were going to. On one of these summer evenings on the farm, and having neither my brothers or Grain to play with, my Uncle Dave, who ran the family farm, asks me if I'd like to come with him to see a baby calf being born on one of the nearby farms. Having never seen a newborn calf before, I enthusiastically agreed to tag along. Driving for 10 minutes down the bumpy country road, we pull outside the entrance of a rather large cow field, where, waiting for my Uncle Dave, were 3 other farmers. Knowing how big my Irish family was, I assumed I was probably related to these men too. Getting out of the car, these 3 farmers stare instantly at me, appearing both shocked and angry. Striding up to my Uncle Dave, one of the farmers yells at him, "What the hell's this Wayne doing here?" Taken back a little by the hostility, I then hear my Uncle Dave reply, "He needs to know. You know as well as I do they can't move here." Feeling rather uncomfortable by this confrontation, I was now somewhat confused. What do I need to know? And more importantly, why can't we move here? Before I can turn to Uncle Dave to ask him, the 4 men quickly halt their bickering and enter through the field gate entrance. Following the men into the cow field, the late evening had turned dark by now, and not wanting to ruin my good trainers by stepping in any cowpats, I walked very cautiously and slowly. So slow, in fact, I'd gotten separated from my uncle's group. Trying to follow the voices through the darkness and thick grass, I suddenly stopped in my tracks, because in front of me, staring back with unblinking eyes, was a very large cow. So large, I at first mistook it for a bull. In the past, my Uncle Dave had warned me not to play in the cow fields, because if cows are with their calves, they may charge at you. Seeing this huge cow, staring stonewall at me, I really was quite terrified, because already knowing how freakishly fast cows can be, I knew if it charged at me, there was little chance I would outrun it. Thankfully, the cow stayed exactly where it was, before losing interest in me and moving on. I know it sounds ridiculous talking about my terrifying encounter with a cow, but I was a city boy after all. Although I regularly fed the cows on the family farm, these animals still felt somewhat alien to me, even after all these years. Brushing off my close encounter, I continued to try and find my Uncle Dave. I eventually found them on the far side of the field's corner. Approaching my uncle's group, I then see they're not alone. Standing by them were 3 more men and a woman, all dressed in farmers' clothing. But surprisingly, my cousin Grain was also with them. I go over to Grain to say hello, but she didn't even seem to realize I was there. She was too busy staring over at something behind the group of farmers. Curious as to what Grain was looking at, I move around to get a better look, and what I see is another cow, just a regular red cow, laying down on the grass. Getting out my phone to turn on the flashlight, I quickly realize this must be the cow that was giving birth. Its stomach was swollen, and there were patches of blood stained on the grass around it. But then I saw something else. On the other side of this red cow, nestled in the grass beneath the bushes, was the calf, and rather sadly it was stillborn. But what greatly concerned me wasn't that this calf was dead. What concerned me was its appearance. Although the calf's head was covered in red, slimy fur, the rest of it wasn't. The rest of it didn't have any fur at all, just skin. And what made every single fiber of my body crawl was that this calf's body, its brittle infant body, it belonged to a human. Curled up into a fetal position, its head was indeed that of a calf, but what I should have been seeing as 2 front and hind legs were instead 2 human arms and legs, no longer or shorter than my own. Feeling terrified and at the same time in disbelief, I leave the calf, or whatever it was, to go back to Grain, all the while turning to shine my flashlight on the calf, as though to see if it still had the same appearance. Before I can make it back to the group of adults, Grain stops me. With a look of concern on her face, she stares silently back at me before she says, "You're not supposed to be here." It was supposed to be a secret. Telling her that Uncle Dave had brought me, I then ask what the hell that thing was. "I'm not allowed to tell you," she says. "This was supposed to be a secret." 20 or 30 so minutes later, we were all standing around as though waiting for something, before the lights of a vehicle pull into the field and a man gets out to come over to us. This man wasn't a farmer, he was some sort of veterinarian. Uncle Dave and the others bring him to tend to the calf's mother, and as he did, me and Grain were made to wait inside one of the men's tractors. We sat inside the tractor for what felt like hours. Even though it was summer, the night was very cold, and I was only wearing a soccer jersey and shorts. I tried prying Grain for more information as to what was going on, but she wouldn't talk about it, or at least wasn't allowed to talk about it. Luckily, my determination for answers got the better of her, because more than an hour later, with nothing but the cold night air and awkward silence to accompany us both, Grain finally gave in. This happens every couple of years, to all the farms here. But we're not supposed to talk about it. It brings bad luck. I then remembered something. When my dad said he wanted us to move here, my mom was dead against it. If anything, she looked scared just considering it. Almost afraid to know the answer, I work up the courage to ask Grain. "Does my mom know about this?" Sat stiffly in the driver's seat, Grain cranes her neck round to me. "Of course she knows," Grain reveals. "Everyone here knows." It made sense now. No wonder my mom didn't want to move here. She never even seemed excited whenever we planned on visiting, which was strange to me, because my mom clearly loved her family. I then remembered something else. A couple of years ago, I remember waking up in the middle of the night inside the farmhouse, and I could hear the cows on the farm screaming. The screaming was so bad, I couldn't even get back to sleep that night. The next morning, rushing through my breakfast to go play on the farm, Uncle Dave firmly tells me and my brothers to stay away from the cowshed. He didn't even give an explanation. Later on that night, after what must have been a good 3 hours, my Uncle Dave and the others come over to the tractor. Shaking Uncle Dave's hand, the veterinarian then gets in his vehicle and leaves out the field. I then noticed 2 of the other farmers were carrying a black bag or something. each holding separate ends as they walked. I could see there was something heavy inside, and my first thought was they were carrying the dead calf, or whatever it was, away. Appearing as though everyone was leaving now, Uncle Dave comes over to the tractor to say we're going back to the farmhouse and that we would drop grain home along the way. Having taken grain home, we then make our way back along the country road, where both me and Uncle Dave sat in complete silence. Uncle Dave driving, just staring at the stretch of road in front of us, and me staring silently at him. By the time we get back to the farmhouse, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and the farm was dead silent. Pulling up outside the farm, Uncle Dave switches off the car engine. Without saying a word, we both remain in silence. I felt too awkward to ask him what I had just seen, but I knew he was waiting for me to do so. Still not saying a word to one another, Uncle Dave turns from the driver's seat to me, and he tells me everything grain wouldn't. "Don't you see now why you can't move here?" he says. "There's something wrong with this place, son. This place is cursed. Your mammy knows. She's known since she was a Wayne. That's why she doesn't want you living here. Why does this happen?" I ask him. "This has been happening for generations, son. For hundreds of years, the animals in the county have been giving birth to these things." The way my Uncle Dave was explaining all this to me, it was almost like a confession, like he'd wanted to tell the truth about what's been happening here all his life. It's not just the cows. It's the pigs, the sheep, the horses, and even the dogs. The dogs. It's always the same. They have the head, as normal, but the body's always different. It was only now, after a long and terrifying night, that I suddenly started to become emotional, and I was completely exhausted. Realizing this was all too much for a young boy to handle, I think my Uncle Dave tried to put my mind at ease. "Don't you worry, son. They never live." Although I wanted all the answers, I now felt as though I knew far too much. But there was one more thing I still wanted to know. What do they do with the bodies? "Don't you worry about it, son. Just tell your mammy that you know, but don't go telling your brothers or your daddy now." She never wanted them knowing. By the next morning, and constantly rethinking everything that happened the previous night, I look around the farmhouse for my mum. Thankfully, she was alone in her bedroom folding clothes, and so I took the opportunity to talk to her in private. Entering her room, she asks me how it was seeing a calf being born for the first time. Staring back at her warm smile, my mouth opens to make words, but nothing comes out, and instantly, my mum knows what's happened. "I could kill your Uncle Dave," she says. "He said it was going to be a normal birth." Breaking down in tears right in front of her, my mum comes over to comfort me in her arms. "It's okay, chicken. There's no need to be afraid." After she tried explaining to me what Grain and Uncle Dave had already told me, her comforting demeanor suddenly turned serious. Clasping her hands upon each side of my arms, my mum crouches down, eyes level with me, and with the most serious look on her face I'd ever seen, she demands of me, "Listen, chicken, whatever you do, don't you dare go telling your brothers or your dad. They can never know. It's going to be our little secret. Okay?" Still with tears in my eyes, I nod a silent yes to her. "Good man yourself," she says. We went back home to England a week later. I never told my brothers or my dad the truth of what I saw, of what really happens on those farms, and I refused to ever step foot inside of County Donegal again. But here's the thing. I recently went back to Ireland, years later in my adulthood, and on my travels, I learned my mum and Uncle Dave weren't telling me the whole truth. This curse, it wasn't regional, and sometimes they do live